Happy Tears Day. Let's talk about The Rings of Power Episode 6. Spoilers ahead. Now, in The Rings of Power Episode 6, there's a lot to talk about and consider. And I've tried to give this some thought and to some extent be enthusiastic about it, because I've reached a point where it actually makes me sad how bad it is. However, episode 6 has a veneer of action that, obviously, from some of the comments I'm seeing and that, has sort of really acted as a sleight of hand to and no, please, people, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of the action was enjoyable. I'm not angry. I think, really, breaking it down, we have to go to the end scene, and for me, Galadriel is at her most relatable throughout the entire season so far. And that's because, really, as Mount Doom erupts and that deadly, poisonous, burning cloud of ash that rushes over all of them, Galadriel looks done. It's like she's had enough, and I say that's relatable for me. She is relatable for me in that moment. There is a lot of really clever plot from the orcs and Adar that comes together in this episode. And when we was talking about this in the podcast last night, it was Adar and the orcs are probably the most relatable, enjoyable part of this series. To be fair, obviously orcs and evil in Tolkien's lore is fairly black and white. If you're evil, you're evil, and good is good, and people slide one way or the other. There's moments of doubt, and you prove whether you're good or evil is evil. So to see Adar bringing this compassion and these genuine, honest motivations for his children, they just want somewhere to live and to exist, is, I suppose, a modern take on things, a good take on things, and I'm rooting for them. I mean, in particular, prior to Galadriel getting the exploding volcano wash over her that she's going to survive, you see how genocidal and psychopathic Galadriel is when she goes to kill Adar and she draws blood only moments after she's sworn an oath to sort of wipe out all of his children so there's no more orcs left, and then she will kill him. And it's a bit poor. Now, obviously, I've gone towards the latter end of the episode in my breakdown, and I felt it was important to do that because, obviously, more Mount Doom exploding is set about by the key, the hilt of the magic sword, being used to unlock a mechanism within the watchtower, which is pretty cool. not gonna pull that apart for the idea behind it. It's more the case of, there's a really cool opening scene to the episode when Adar and the orcs go to begin the siege or the attack on the watchtower, and they walk in and there's no villagers there defending it, just Arondir, who has this really cool sequence and brings down the tower, killing orcs, and the orcs are driven out because of all the devastation by bringing down the watchtower, which later in the episode the human guy who knows all about the hilt of the sword just strolls into and finds the mechanism and unlocks it, and the mechanism works perfectly, and the dams break and the rivers flow into all the tunnels that the orcs have been building. They go all the way to Mount Doom to cause an eruption. I say, I'm no geologist. I don't know whether that would cause a volcano to erupt. I'm not. That's okay. It's the whole thing around the key and the sequence. The tower was destroyed at the start of the episode, and a night passes at best. The orcs have had to flee this watchtower because a load of them get killed as the tower comes down. And yet, the human guy with the key just wanders in, just unlocks it. No having to sift through rubble or struggle to get in there. It's just he wanders in there and unlocks the key. Now, the other thing about the key is, earlier in the episode, we see Arondir trying to destroy it. And then he hides it. And you know what's going to happen, because little kid who's had the hilt of the sword, like, watches Arondir, and you know that it's just that Arondir is making a point of making sure no one knows where it's hidden, except the kid has followed him. And bearing in mind where it was hidden, as we later find out, it's predictable lazy writing. I say the strategies that is used in the conflict, they're pretty good. I don't want to just rip episode 6 apart because I find any fun in it, because I don't. I mean, I enjoyed it watching it through the second time compared to the first time, but it's the good guys are being made to be deliberately stupid, and the bad guys are sort of running rings around them because of they have greater intellect, greater cunning. I mean, the whole thing, once they pursue Adar and they get a hold of the wrapped hilt, or what they believe is the wrapped hilt, Galadriel, she hasn't seen it before, so you can forgive her for, I don't know, not picking up on any power within it. Not checking it, that's another matter. But after her dialogue with Adar, she hands it to Arondir, who has held it. He knows what it is, and surely would know that it's a different shape. I mean, it's really ridiculous. And the importance that has been put on this item, I mean, Galadriel just hands it to Arondir, and then Arondir just hands it to the lad, and then the lad discovers it's a axe and not the hilt, and then we get the end sequence of using the sword to do the reveal, and it makes the characters foolish, unreasonably foolish in my opinion. which again is why I understand why Galadriel just sort of walks towards the death cloud of erupting volcano. Another thing, obviously, in the pursuit, Adar flees with the fake item. Galadriel pursues immediately, and Halbrand sort of looks around a little bit and then pursues Galadriel. Good job he knows this land, because somehow he gets in front of them and brings down Adar, which, say, as a scene isn't so bad. I mean, it's too much plot convenience and not enough sort of... I wonder if they were in the writing room and going, oh yeah, that would be cool, and no one thought to say, yeah, but what about sort of brought down the tower, won't it be a lot of rubble? Don't worry about it. No one will worry about that. They're just seeing this cool scene, they're not going to question that. It's just that, how does Halbrand get ahead of these two elves on horses, especially after Galadriel says the magic words, Noelim, sort of turbo boosts a horse to pursue Adar, and Halbrand sort of just, I don't know, takes a shortcut. Aren't people going to question that? No. Got to serve the point in the story. Halbrand brings down Adar, and then they have this cool scene where he's just like, do you remember me? No. Blah, blah, blah. More and more, it's glaringly obvious most of the things that are wrong with this show have occurred in the writer's room. When they've sat down and wrote this, taking into account the lore, they must have really been in an echo chamber of, yeah, that's a great idea. We don't need to explain that. No, that's a great idea. No, we don't need to explain that either. People will suspend their disbelief because we're telling a great story. And it's like, it's not a great story. We had a discussion last night in the podcast, sort of like, how would you sell this show? What would you say this show is about? And honestly, I couldn't answer that. I know what it's meant to be about. I know what it should be about. I know what the lore tells us the Second Age is about. But they've thrown that out the window. Literally. We've got unrelatable characters, predictable storytelling. I mean, going back to this episode with the early scenes of the Númenóreans, it's just like, okay, they're going to turn up at the desperate moment when the villagers really need them and it looks lost, and then the Númenóreans are going to come charging in, which they do. And again, we said last night in discussion, it's not like when the riders of Rohan turn up at Minas Tirith and there's that sort of moment of building the tension. It's poorly done. I mean, really, there's parts... When we was talking again last night, I was thinking it's a sort of... Having recently rewatched The Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones, and I've watched that episode probably half a dozen to a dozen times. Every time I watch the scene when Rickon Stark is running across the field and Jon is trying to save him, there is believable tension and still a fraction of surprise when the arrow actually hits and kills Rickon. It's drawn out perfectly. I say there is in episode 6 a veneer of action, which is obviously satisfying some people, and I'm absolutely happy to say, if you are enjoying this show, great. This isn't even an enjoyable video to make to some extent, because I'm attacking something that is set in a world in the Legendarium that I love. And it was sad to admit last night that, am I looking forward to the next episode? Not for watching the episode. I think it's going to be a stalling episode to lay the groundwork for whatever they've got planned for the finale. And really, episode 7 is a marker for being a few days closer to seeing the next episode of House of the Dragon. That sucks. It really does. Man, they had one job. They had one job to this show. I think I said this in a previous video. This show should have written itself following the law, and I just feel more and more that the writer's room was just an echo chamber where no one questioned anything or offered questions, or how do we explain this? We don't need to explain it. They'll accept it. It'll be all right. They'll be too dazzled by the scenery or the music to care about the plot or motivations or whether the characters are likable. So that's episode 6. I mean, as a rating, I want to be more generous. I don't want to pick it apart. It remains a 3 out of 10 for me, and that is being generous on my part. I feel a little bit detached from it now that it's not adhering to the law. Even still, it's a real dud of a show. Anyway, that's my episode 6 review. There's probably some other things I should say or could say. There were some nice scenes. I mean, really, Elendil having the moment with the horse, and again, we talked about this last night, and the parallel to how Aragorn is with Brago. That's a nice nod. But that's all it is it's a nod to something we've already seen. And they have butchered beloved characters. Cheers if you've sat through this a lot longer than it's intended it to be. I'll see you for the next video. Do take care. Goodbye.